Well, hello and welcome to episode number 371 of the Plane Talking UK podcast. I'm Carlos, and in this week's show, a passenger tries to take up piloting by attempting to break into the flight deck, and a E190 gets special clearance into London City, and a 100-year-old man logs some sim time. In the military, we have a lot of news from the US Air Force as they begin to evaluating electric aircraft for medical evacuation missions. They retire the last OC-135 treaty verification aircraft, and they abandon plans to replace their fleet of 757s or C-32 VIP aircraft, while the US Navy conducts the first air-to-air refuelling from an unmanned to manned aircraft. So, joining me this week, and I'd love to read what I've written in the show notes here, but I'm not going to. Joining me this week, sitting beside me here in the PTUK studios, it is, of course, Matt Smith.
See, I can see what he's written in the show notes there, and I want to know which one of us is Boney M, frankly. But anyway, there we go.
Well, I was going to say that Al could be Ali G, but...
right,
yeah.
Okay. And on that bombshell, move on.
So for those of you who don't already know, Matt has just come off the back of doing an entire week of breakfast shows for local radio. And what a great job he done as well.
Moving on. Go on.
You kept me entertained on my journey into work.
I was very grateful of your actual live roving travel reports. They were very helpful.
Matt had proper live traffic updates.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, voice notes being sent while, honestly. Never mind. Yes, anyway, joining us across the lands in the UK here in his sprawling estate in Buckinghamshire, it is, of course, Neville Bounds.
And apart from the big hay fever that's going on today, I'm feeling very chipper. Thank you very much.
Hay fever.
On Monday, I should be going on a real plane from a real airport.
What?
Wow.
I know.
What? Which airport? Where? How?
Don't tell anyone.
No, it's only Heathrow to Edinburgh. But
okay.
Hey, I've missed it.
Yeah, no, I bet. No, genuinely, I bet you have. Yeah. I really do.
So it'll be quite interesting to see how many people are around as well. I'm going out there for a few days for work. So.
And which lounge has now been closed? That's also.
Well, yes, they've opened them all, I think, but
okay.
they've had to. Well, it's just not the same sort of setup as they had previously. So it'll be interesting to see what the bacon rolls are like. And all that sort of stuff.
That's true.
The important stuff.
That's the thing, actually, now, with you travelling, or going to go back to travelling now, Nev, that you need to make sure these lounges are actually open for BA, that you have access to, because all that lovely food and drink that you'll be missing out.
Well, can't have that.
No.
Can't have that. That's...
No. And talking of lovely food and bacon rolls and glorious food, it gives me great pleasure to welcome back onto the show. We haven't had him on for a little while, and he is, of course, the connoisseur of all fine foods. It is Captain Al.
And ice cream, especially.
And ice cream, yeah. Hello, Al.
Hello, all. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. And yes, it's probably true that Nev is the expert connoisseur on BAPS. And I'm sure he'll be bringing you a in-depth report on the BAPS that he finds at Heathrow on his next trip.
I'm too tired for this. Sorry.
Looking forward to that. As long as they're flour dusted BAPS, that's fine.
Don't you start, crikey.
So I mean, I was going to say, how are things with you, Al? What have you been up to? What's life? How's life treating you?
Life is treating me well. Thank you very much for asking. I've been quite busy during the course of the week doing my sort of daily job, and enjoying the nice weather as it so goes. And I've had a glass or two of champagne because it's the wedding anniversary, and we both remembered, so that's always a bonus.
Right, that's a good start. Yeah.
Well, we've got no music lined up, but congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Indeed. How many years?
I can say, how long is it?
Yes, it's been 15 years.
Wow. That's very cool.
I know, quite a shocker, really, isn't it?
How long have you been
less for
married
murder?
Me and Gemma will be 10 years in September.
Wow. Ooh. Okay. Mr. Bounds, I almost don't know. Well, actually, shall I ask? Perhaps I shouldn't ask Mr. Bounds. I don't know.
Well, it's 2 years this time around.
Yes, because they reset each time you get a new one, don't they?
The bank balance reduces.
Right. Yes, indeed. Absolutely damaged. Yeah, indeed. Oh, well, I'm sorry I asked now.
I bet you'd wish that you'd paid more attention and developed a bigger friendship with the kid at your school who wanted to be a solicitor, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. In fact, there was somebody at school. It was Luke Jacobs, I seem to recall. But yes, funnily enough, he ended up on the wrong side of the law at one point.
No!
Oh, there's always one.
Was never seen again. So, yeah.
Oh dear, there you go.
Yeah. Karen Davis in my year at school, she's a solicitor. She's the same age as me, obviously, because we're in the same class. She retires this year, so therein lies a tale.
Oh dear.
Gosh.
Oh, blimey.
So, yes, their day rates, their hourly rates aren't bad at all.
Yes.
I've read your email, and here's my £175
Quite,
bill.
absolutely. Is it one of those where you're just sort of thinking, like, you're sort of watching your friends around, you starting to retire, and you think, what is it I did wrong again? To not be doing the same.
So you've read the email. Do you have an opinion on it? Oh, you want an opinion? Oh, that's an extra £175, of course.
Now, this does sound like somebody who's been bitten by this, I suspect, but there we go. Never mind. Anyway, should we talk about some aviation?
Yeah, let's talk about some aviation. So last weekend, on Saturday, I had a very special guest fly in to join me
Did
at
you?
Beccles. I actually took the chance to go up to my old club where I started my flying lessons many years ago to go and see some of my friends up there who, because the club has completely changed. It's
Has
an
it?
absolute, I know, we'll talk about that in a moment, but I had the pleasure of welcoming Captain Al in his Piper onto the field, and we've got a little video to play just before we chat a bit more about that. So Matt, if you want to hit the button. And there is Al leaving there at the end of the afternoon. We had a lovely afternoon, didn't we, Al?
We did indeed. Yeah, I have to say, as you know, I'm a big fan of general aviation and a big supporter of it. And I know that you talked previously about the sort of pseudo demise of Beccles, or Ella as you call it, I know. And I'd heard that it had been rejuvenated and that they had, new eating facilities. And wow, what a place it's turned into, eh? Absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely changed for the better. They've got loads of facilities now, restaurant, bar, really nice places to eat outside, seating places outside. They've also got now as well places you can actually stay, actually rent like a kind of bit of a glamping kind of affair. You can stay in a really nice little kind of mobile home style affair, but cool. Really, really well done inside. Absolutely fantastic accommodation, and the club is a completely different place altogether. If I strongly recommend, if anyone watching is a GA pilot and has the chance to fly into Beccles, it's well worth a visit. And
indeed, and that salad that you had looked amazing.
Yes, it did, Al. Yes, the salad that we both had was a fantastic salad that we had.
Salad.
Yes, it was a salad. Trust me. But actually, what I'm going to ask you, Al,
salad?
is yes, a salad. Trust me. was
I don't believe you.
going back to my days as a solo pilot, taking off from that runway there at Beccles, remembering the kind of potholes and stuff that you'd have to miss on your run out. I'm guessing that obviously you landed on their new runway, which was a lot better, Al.
Very much so, yes. It's still got the grass starter extension. I'm guessing that there's some sort of planning reason or constructional reason, or just simply cost, that they weren't able to turn it all into tarmac. But yeah, it's a lovely tarmac runway that sits on top of the old concrete. And yeah, great, absolutely fantastic. A real warm welcome when we arrived. Obviously, you're quite a well-known character there. And, I've obviously smoothed over the waters now and you're allowed to go back. But
quite. Yes.
But needless to say, I was made very welcome and I'm allowed to go back any time I want to. But no, great. And nice to see lots of activity going on. And I've done my little bit in trying to promote it. But I can see a bright future for Beccles there under the current setup.
Yeah, it's well worth a visit, and also as well, they've got a really good helicopter training centre there at Virage, who also do helicopter training, which is also a big part of the area there. So well worth a visit if you're in the area. Go and have a look.
Absolutely.
So we have no Armando this week on the show with us, but he has been working hard to put together the bits and pieces for us to play out on the show, and he sent us some pictures as well of his tough life that he's having in the skies, with a caption, "When do you?" He says, "When do you guys edit show notes?" He's put in here the pictures. I think Matt's got on the screen. I think he'll get those on the screen in just a moment. But he's been, unfortunately, Armando's been slumming it in seat 3F.
Not quite 1A then.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Oh, goodness me.
Yeah, someone called Neville was in 1A at the time.
Course,
but seat 3F, so you can see the pictures of those of you watching on YouTube there of where Armando's been flying over in the US. But he was in first class on American Airlines.
Indeed,
apparently.
Absolutely. And the picture that we're referring to here, we should just explain. This picture here is why it says in the show notes here, where do you guys do the show notes? He did it with his iPad in first class whilst tucking into a sandwich mid-flight.
Sandwich. Well, that tells you all you need to know, doesn't it, about American Airlines first class? Sandwich.
Okay, yeah.
Heavens.
I'm amazed. Well, that's good skills.
He's got a Bloody Mary on the go.
Right. Okay. I don't think that's what. Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. It says so on the can and everything. Yeah.
Rumble.
On the can.
Yeah.
On the can. Oh.
Oh dear. I
mean, it's not, whatever it is, Great Eastern Northern Anglian Rail here,
Not quite. Indeed.
A can of Bloody Mary. Yeah. Does the Worcester sauce come in a sachet, does it? That the Americans would call a sachet.
Right, okay. Lovely.
No, it comes in one of those plastic round tomatoes with a squeezy
Don't do that on camera, thank you.
Anyway, we better move on before we get in trouble. So acknowledging everyone in the chat room as we do each week. So we're going to thanks everyone who joined us in the live YouTube chat room this evening, and also big thanks to anyone listening to the audio version. Don't forget, if you want to join in on the madness that is the YouTube chat room, because I'm sure it is crazy in there this evening, you can go over to YouTube and click on the notification button and the subscribe button as well over on Plain Talking UK. Just search for us on YouTube if you already haven't done that as well. And those regularly in the chat room will know that we normally have a bit of pre-show and post-show banter, and you can directly interact with the hosts. And the community is a fantastic place to be in the chat room.
But please don't let that put you off, having to interact with us.
So,
please don't let that be a negative.
And that's a virtual interaction, not a physical interaction.
No,
it is. Well done. So
not since the lawsuit, anyway.
Hello to, let's run through the list here. Richard Adams, hello to you, Richard Adams. John Jester, Graham Haley, Stephen Ivy, hello to you, Stephen. Jenny in Rome, over in Rome, where it's raining. I can't believe that. It's sunny here. We've got our main man, Micah. Hello to you, Uncle Micah. Sturman, hello to you, Garth. Hope you are well. Saw him a few times today. Tony S, hello to you. Dirk S, APG Show. Not sure which one of those APG hosts
doesn't really
in
matter.
charge.
They're all
there
very important. Yeah.
Arnie Carlson, hello to you, Arnie. New face there in the chat room. Hello to you, Arnie Carlson.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us.
Whereabouts are you in the world, Arnie Carlson?
Just because we're very nosy.
We're very nosy, yeah. And obviously Neville Bounds is in there with his wielding his blue spanner of doom. Keeping an eye on things. So watch out.
I'm feeling particularly strict tonight. So
are you?
Yes.
Well, there we are. Good luck, everyone.
So we've got loads to get through tonight. Loads of news stories, and including some military as well, which has been sent to us this week as by Armando.
Sorry, don't panic, Al. You haven't got to read them. It's all right.
No, it's fine.
It's all right. We'll overrun anyway, and it'll just get filtered.
So without further ado,
APG's on later, isn't it? So
yes,
it's
we have to finish on time, don't we?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
So without further ado, we are going to kick off the show then, as we do each week, with a rundown of the weekly news from across the world and the UK. So if everyone is ready.
Certainly are.
Born ready.
So kicking off this week's first news story, and this one comes to us from Reuters.com and Yahoo.com. And Delta Airlines flight diverted to New Mexico after passenger tries to breach the cockpit. And that wasn't me either. So an unruly passenger who tried breaking into the cockpit of a Delta Airlines flight bound for Tennessee from California was subdued by cabin crew and fellow passengers as the plane was diverted to New Mexico, officials said. Delta Flight 386 from Los Angeles bound for Nashville arrived at Albuquerque International Sunport, where authorities removed the passenger from the plane and took him into custody, an airport spokesperson said. Delta said the 737-900 had 162 passengers and 6 crew members on board. And FBI in Albuquerque said on Twitter that it was responding to the incident and that there was no threat to the public at this time, but provided no further details. The airline and law enforcement did not say whether the individual was armed or whether he was under the influence of alcohol and drugs or what may have prompted the outburst. No one was hurt during the incident and the flight resumed its trip to Nashville after the diversion, the airport spokesperson said. Los Angeles-based CBS News affiliate KCBS-TV posted cell phone video taken by several passengers showing a man lying on his stomach in the aisle of the aircraft, repeatedly yelling, "Stop this plane," as he was being restrained. A flight attendant and passengers bound his hands and feet with yellow cord, then carried him to the rear of the aircraft, where he was placed face down on the seat, the video clip showed. And thank you to that scooter driving person for going past the window.
Was that your pizza being delivered?
Hopefully, yes. Yes.
Margarita.
Doing a snack, yeah.
So, storming, I mean, we all know that trying to do this was a bit of a fruitless kind of task, really, because the flight deck doors, as we know, after 9/11 were all rather reinforced slightly. But Al, I'm guessing in your years of flying the various airlines you've flown for, you never had anyone try to join you on the flight deck?
No, I think it's one of those situations where it's only going to end in tears, isn't it?
Absolutely, and long may that continue,
and a long ban.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. It's I mean, part of me sort of almost asking the question, like, what is it? At what point did they think that in any way that was going to be successful? I mean, had they forgotten about, the rule change since 9/11? Therefore, they were locked and bolted, and I just can't. I worry about humans sometimes.
I watched a really interesting thing on one of the Discovery Channel type networks a few months back, and they were talking about people's their kind of reactions and how they react now if something ever happened like this on an aircraft, if someone got a bit rowdy.
Right.
And they were saying now how obviously since 9/11 and the kind of terroristy things and stuff that go on, that went on, that they were saying that passengers now are more likely to step up.
Yeah.
And they didn't say it like this, but kick the
bejeebers
out of anyone trying to be naughty.
I mean, because I don't know if, I mean, ironically, and I'm sure, I don't know what Al thinks about that, but I mean, presumably that doesn't necessarily help the situation and or the cabin crew, because, you know, they're obviously experienced and trained in trying to deal with these situations.
But yeah, absolutely. It's, as we've said, usually the people who attempt to do this are either genuinely confused as they're trying to find the lavatory. That happens from time to time. They're confused because they may have a medical condition, or they have some sort of mental affliction. But yeah, anybody who tries to break into the cockpit of a commercial airliner is going to come unstuck.
In no uncertain terms, yeah.
It's where we need
absolutely.
that old quick access door. Just open the door. Bye.
No, I like Al's version. Yeah,
an axe. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Okay, we'll move on to the next story then, and as always, story number 2 is a Ryanair story. And this one is, I must say, I'm slightly surprised, yet sort of pleased about, frankly. It's that EU courts halt €550 million aid to airline Condor following Ryanair challenge. So an EU court has halted a German bid to give a €550 million state aid to airline Condor following a challenge by Irish carrier Ryanair. Germany agreed to lend Condor €550 million in state loans last year due to COVID-19 in a move later approved by the European Commission. The General Court of the European Union annulled the Commission's decision to allow the aid this week, but suspended its ruling pending a further decision by officials. Ryanair had argued that the Commission failed to take into account the damage caused to the Condor's business by its own insolvency when it ruled that the aid from the German state did not breach EU law. In its ruling, the General Court states that the Commission should have examined carefully whether or not the damage suffered by Condor was decisively the result of the pandemic. Condor was part of the Thomas Cook Group, which collapsed in 2019, forcing the airline to file for insolvency, after which the German government loaned it £380 million. The insolvency proceedings were extended to April 2020, when an investor, which was previously lined up to rescue the airline, pulled out of the deal. Ryanair welcomed the finding. The Irish group pointed out that while COVID had hit all airlines, Germany had decided to support only its inefficient national carriers, including Condor. Ryanair pointed out that EU governments had given €30 billion in aid to former flag carriers through the COVID-19 crisis. I mean,
interesting one, this one.
Yeah.
So, do you imagine how much of that €550 million is left? Because if you're sat at Condor and you're thinking, oh, well, we've got €100 million left of that nice money that the German government lent us, but we've got this court case coming up and it could go either way. I think we'll spend it.
Yes.
We can't give back what we've not got.
Indeed. And of course, I suppose the last thing that any court would want is to have a business essentially collapse as a result of its ruling. Although I suppose that, that there is a precedent for that, I know, but I don't know. It's, I mean, on the one hand, I'm sort of, I don't know. I have to be a bit careful how I answer this one, because part of me's thinking, well, if the German government wants to help out one of its German carriers, but of course they're a member of the EU, so I don't know. This is such a minefield, isn't it?
If you remember, this is going back a while now, but I think Air France was on the wrong side of this at one point as well, where they had, I believe, they had received some state aid as well. But this does happen, I think, from time to time, and then it's up to quite often other airlines to challenge the ruling or the situation, isn't it? So.
Yeah, I mean, do you think this will essentially mean collapse, though? I mean, that's the ultimate question here, I guess. No.
Someone will get a slap on the wrist and say, awfully sorry, when we've got it, we'll give it back to you, don't worry about that, old bean. But in the meantime, we'll just carry on and pretend it hasn't happened. How does that suit you?
Right.
And I'm sure the German government will go, that's okay, fine by us, okay.
But I suppose you could argue, understandably, Mr. O'Leary has very much got a bee in his bonnet over this.
He's got an absolute point.
Yeah.
But, this practice, continues to go on year in, year out. I dread to think how many, probably billions, Alitalia has received from the Italian government.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sure that's been funded by the Italian government since its almost conception. So, obviously, we have, the latest reincarnation of Alitalia just about to pop its head out of the eggshell of the last demise. So, O'Leary has a very valid point, and he's made his point. He's, but halted the bid to give Condor 550 million euros. Well, I suspect that money's already changed hands.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But at what point do you stop bailing out? We all love the aviation industry and we all want it to survive through this horrific situation. But at what point do you sort of say enough is enough?
Well, to me, it's a little bit like there are certain parts of the UK where, for periods of time, they've tried to instigate 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and have just basically given up enforcing it because it's almost enforceable. So I think it's probably time in some ways that the EU said, well, okay, if governments want to prop up their state airlines, carry on, because it just goes on under the nose of the regulator. The court's made a ruling, but is it going to change anything? No, it won't. So it's just one of those pointless, unenforceable rules. And ultimately, do you think it's right that, governments support businesses in their countries? Well, probably yes. I think if it were a case that, say, for example, British Airways was going to collapse, would it be reasonable that the government stepped in to secure jobs? Well, yes, I think it would be.
Of course,
I would argue that the government should take a shareholding in the airline so that when the debts are repaid or whatever and dividends can be paid, then the taxpayer gets some benefit out of that. But this whole thing is just it's all wibbly wobbly with regards to who stands by the rules and who doesn't.
Of course, a lot of industries here in the UK and, of course, around Europe and things have been benefiting from what we're referring to as a furlough scheme. But obviously, there are different schemes that are more or less doing similar things throughout the rest of Europe. We're in unprecedented times at the moment, really, aren't we? Where so many businesses are being propped up by governments just to sort of try and get us out of this.
Yes,
indeed.
Nev, you have got the next story.
Yes, it's on the BBC website, and here's some industry reaction to the planned US-UK plans to reopen travel. But travel industry figures have dismissed the latest moves by the US and the UK to reopen travel. A new task force will be set up to make recommendations on easing restrictions as part of an Atlantic charter. A number 10 statement said that the UK Prime Minister and the US President would work to relaunch UK-US travel as soon as possible. The task force will be overseen in the UK by Transport Secretary Grant Shapps and will be chaired by senior officials in the UK and the US. But the Virgin Atlantic Chief Exec, Shay Weiss, says that the announcement falls short. He said that the lack of a specific time frame for reopening travel meant that airlines, businesses and passengers faced a lack of certainty. So ahead of the start of the G7 summit in Cornwall this week, Mr Weiss urged Mr Biden and Mr Johnson to allow transatlantic travel no later than the 4th of July. Criticism about the plan's lack of specificity, and that is quite difficult to say, was also raised by other key industry figures, including Clive Ratton, who's chief exec of the Business Travel Association and the Association of British Travel Agents, ABTA. In a letter calling for transatlantic travel to open on Monday, airline bosses and Heathrow Airport estimated that UK businesses are losing £23 million per day that the route remains closed. Well, nearly all passengers from the UK are currently banned from travelling to the US, and under a presidential decree introduced last March, non-US citizens who have been in the UK in the last 14 days cannot enter the country unless a specific exemption applies. Meanwhile, travellers from the US to the UK must self-isolate for 10 days on arrival, as the country is currently on the amber list.
Marvellous, marvellous. So what we need there is a whole group of people to set together a task force. Now, Mr. Shaps comes in for a bit of criticism from a lot of people, but I've got this sorted, okay? What I'm going to do is, after the show, I'm going to whiz down to Cornwall, and I'm going to take Mr. Biden and Mr. Johnson, and we're going to go to the Little Chef in Camborne.
Oh, no, don't do that to them.
Down, okay? And I'm going to say, Joe, I've got the big bender for you, because, okay, you're American, and the hot dog, that's going to make you feel at home. Boris, I've got the Jubilee pancake for you, because I know you're a big royalist, and that's going to make you feel at home, okay? We're going to sit down around the table, cup of tea, chaps, and I'm going to say, Joe, are you going to let Boris's people who've been vaccinated into your country? Good man, thank you very much. Boris, are you going to let Joe's people who've been vaccinated into your country? Thank you, good man. Problem solved, let's move on. Have a Knickerbocker glory and celebrate.
I mean, I'm with you 100%, but I'm not entirely sure that the leader of the free world, as he's often referred to, I'm not sure that we should. Well, I don't think anybody should have to endure a little chef. Let alone.
What's wrong with the big bender?
There's absolutely nothing. There's nothing I can say to that. There's absolutely nothing.
All you need to do, I mean, get Armando onto this, because he's got connections over there.
Okay.
Get him on his special telephone. Joe, are you up for a big bender?
Right. Okay. I mean,
we don't need a task force. Hell's teeth. It can all be solved in a Little Chef in Camborne.
Right.
Also, I've got to say that this green, amber and red business is just unworkable.
It's challenging for colourblind people, isn't it? I mean, that's discriminatory.
Quite. Yes,
it is nonsense.
It is a bit, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know. I mean, and of course, we should, sort of say probably, and I appreciate, there's lots of people who've chosen not to have the vaccine or are unable to have it for medical reasons and stuff, and there is an argument that obviously
well, that's fine. They can fly to Mexico and then just go in the midst of the night, just hop over the wall, and that's fine.
Right.
That's how it's been done for hundreds of years. No, to be serious for a moment, what we don't need here is we don't need 6 months of a task force to basically undo something that was done in 20 minutes. So all it needs is just someone to go down there, bash a couple of bonces together and say, come on, right, let's get this sorted out. We don't need some, 20 people, with diplomatic baggage, toing and froing. If you can't sort it out over a breakfast at the Little Chef, it's not worth bothering about.
Quite okay. I mean, and I'm hoping that sort of come October time that certainly this sort of thing will have been sorted out, because there are rumours of a trip being planned in the Matt household at the moment.
Okay, good.
Going to possibly to the States. So we're living in hope.
Join me in December when I hopefully will be out.
Yeah, indeed. So we'll see what happens there. But but as Nev says, so of course the biggest problem we've had, and I know we talked about this at length last week as well, but of course it's the ambiguity, isn't it? It's the not knowing, and it's the sort of the dithering and the changing of minds and things like that, as you say, like with the green, amber and red list, for example, and lots of questions being asked about why Portugal was suddenly dumped on the list when their COVID cases are no worse than ours and all that kind of thing. I mean, it's just all, and I'm sure you agree with me on this one, Nev. It's just all the uncertainty. It's just not fair on holidaymakers, businesses. Just so much of it could have been
or the
dealt with
airlines,
better.
Because frankly, if this task force takes 6 months, there won't be any airlines left in the UK. So let's put a bit of urgency into this. This is this is multi-billion-pound decision making, and prevaricating is not the way to go.
Yeah. Also, I think we've had enough of aircraft on the ground and furloughed crews, and so have they. And it costs a fortune to keep aircraft on the ground.
It does.
And I think that there's been some massive misjudgments here. We've got to get people flying again if they've been double vaccinated and they can prove that they have been, and an arrangement can be made with the country that they're going to. I really don't see what the problem is.
Well, it's a starting point, isn't it?
Yeah.
And quite frankly, if anybody's got any objections to the Little Chef, well, Wendy's are opening up a branch in Reading.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've just done some internet research and there is no Little Chef in Cambourne.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
Oh no.
So straight away we've failed.
We've hit a problem there. Absolutely. I'm trying to think what other rubbish road cafes we could.
Dave's Burger Van.
I'm rather partial to a burger van. I have to be honest.
Okay.
Maybe that's what we need. What we need to do is we need to take Boris and Joe to the A11. Is it the A11 where you've got? Is it Wendy's Baps?
Oh yes,
in the lay-by there. I think that's clearly what we need to do. We need.
He's playing his own road at Mildenhall, isn't it? So
it's true. Yeah,
I think we had a bit of a tough sell with, hey Joe, do you want a big bender? But we might be really stretching it with, do you want to come and see Wendy's Baps?
Well, quite. Anyway, I think we probably I'm being shouted at in my ear by our producer, so I think we should probably move on.
Right. Al, you've got Al. You're talking about London City here.
Okay, right, fantastic. So this is the E190-E2 gaining its steep approach clearance for London City. So EASA, the European Safety Agency, has certified Embraer's E190-E2 for steep approach, a requirement to operate at London City Airport. The airport is strategically placed close to London's financial district. However, the airport has a steep approach and short runway, as well as strict noise regulations, so operating aircraft must meet the relevant regulations. The E190-E2 is the first variant of the new E2 family of regional jets to enter service. Embraer says that the aircraft's wings, engines and systems make the E190-E2 aircraft significantly quieter than the previous E190 and has a 63% smaller noise footprint at takeoff than current E190s operating from London City. These figures, which have been confirmed by EASA in certification testing. The steep approach system on the E190-E2 enables increased descent angles of up to 5.5 degrees, the normal ILS being 3 degrees. The system is enabled using a software upgrade and installation of a corresponding steep approach switch on the cockpit control panel. Due to the cockpit commonality between the E190 and the E190-E2, pilots already cleared for London City operation need no simulator-based training to use the steep approach function. The E190-E2 is also 17% more efficient than its predecessor in terms of fuel burns and emissions. 17% is massive, by the way, in aircraft speak, while at the same time offering a much greater range. Its range from London City has nearly doubled, with the E190-E2 able to cover over 4,000 kilometres, opening up such destinations as Istanbul, Casablanca, and Moscow for operators. So there you go. As it so happens, British Airways City Flyer are already operating the E190 out of London City. But this brings into it, a real improvement, for the people who live around London City Airport, because it is surrounded by a built-up area. But it also really opens up the commercial opportunities for operators to extend their wings out further. So
that's a
great news.
Hell of a range on the aircraft, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, London City to Moscow. Be interesting to see that if they can do that on a wet runway with a low QNH, but nonetheless, it's great, and that's 17% efficiency saving. That's massive. That's big bucks.
Please forgive my ignorance here, Al, but what's the QNH that you mentioned there?
Okay, so that's the pressure. So like when we have low pressure dominating the UK, and you feel kind of more pushed into your seat and depressed.
Right.
Well, it's exactly the same for the aeroplane engines. They can't produce the same amount of thrust when the pressure is low. So therefore, basically, for the you can't go and extend the runway just because it's wet and there's a low pressure. So the ability to carry the amount of weight off that runway reduces when the runway's wet. There's a low pressure, or indeed if it's a high temperature. So. It's all about
cool. As I say, please forgive my ignorance there. It was. I thought, no, I need to ask that question. I've probably done us out of a plain truth there, haven't I? But never mind.
We can always do that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, John Jess has mentioned in the chat room. Actually, he says that the KLM E2-190s are practically silent.
Are they?
So yeah, I don't know.
Is that because they're all parked up at Rotterdam?
Right.
Well, actually, there's a lot of these parked up. But me and Nev were just talking the other day. What we know, there's a lot of these parked up at Norwich Airport, BA's ones.
Yes.
The 190s and that's sitting.
You're not
there.
being tempted to drive up then? Just borrow one at night.
It would be. Well, they are literally right next to the main road, Al. So you could probably just hop over the fence and have a go.
As you do.
As you do.
As you do.
I mean,
I would try.
I mean, obviously, take your camcorder with you and do a segment for the show, and then obviously we can come and visit you on a regular basis from your new abode.
In your new home.
3 meals a day.
In your new home at Her Majesty's pleasure.
I mean, it does solve the problem of where to hold the 400th episode, doesn't it?
There is that. Yeah. Visiting rights in what's the one nearest us? Begins with a W, doesn't it? Anyway, whichever prison it is.
Well, there's plenty of specialist prisons in Norfolk and Suffolk, aren't there? So,
there are. Wayland, that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we go and visit you in Wayland. That's where you'll end up. I have no doubt. No?
No.
Okay, right.
I'll do
3 square meals a day and 3 square meals a day and soap on a rope. There you go. You'll be happy, Carlos.
And a PS5 to boot. Anyway.
Hey,
I know.
I've got a headache. Moving on.
So, moving on to airships with the next story.
Pardon?
This is from livescience.com.
Is that ships with a P?
Let's hope so. Moving on.
AINonline.com as well, and futureflight.aero. And Hybrid Air Vehicles, or HAVs, says its hybrid electric Airlander 10 airship.
You got to get down with the youth there, man. It's halves. It's halves. It's not HAVs. It's halves. You've either got it or you haven't got it. Okay.
Oh, I could be really political and say HAVs. Says it's hybrid.
Price by the habits of a lifetime.
Electric. Its electric Airlander 10 airship is on track to be ready to carry up to 100 passengers on regional airline services beginning in 2025. Newly released cabin concepts show possible configurations ranging from a spacious 10-seat layout for luxury tours or on-demand urban air mobility services to high-density versions for scheduled city-to-city operations. It doesn't look a flying bum. Anyway, the UK-based company says...
Is this the one we saw crash?
Yes, it was.
Okay, yeah.
The UK company says the aircraft will be able to support airline routes of... oh, God, it does look nice. Of around 230 nautical miles. However, with a top speed of around 75 knots, the Airlander 10 will be significantly slower than the conventional aircraft. My word, I'd rather go into a Cessna 150 with a headwind. No. Nevertheless, HAV believes it can be competitive by offering passengers the chance to completely bypass airports to fly directly from one downtown location to another, taking off from seafronts, docks or any flat surface on land. In some cases, HAV says the Airlander would generate 75% lower CO2 emissions than alternative means of transport. It could even result in lower carbon dioxide or CO2 emissions per passenger than train services when they run on time. Hey, Matt. For example, 112 nautical miles flight... I just listened to Matt's travel news this morning.
Moving on, yeah.
112 nautical mile flight from downtown Seattle to the centre of Vancouver in an Airlander 10 would take 4 hours and 12 minutes, generating 4.61 kilograms of CO2 per passenger. Allowing for airport transfers, check-in and security processes, the same trip via current airline services would take 3 hours 6 minutes, but would result in CO2 emissions of 53.15 kilos per passenger. The Liverpool to Northern Irish capital Belfast is a possible route for which the airship would be significantly faster than ferries and not much slower than airline service. According to research conducted by UK industry Group A Aerospace, Defence and Space, around 47% of regional airline flights are shorter than 200 nautical miles. The company now expects to start a civil certification process later in the year and to have 3 aircraft engaged in test flights by 2023. And this has been in the mix for a while, this flying.
Well, I know. I think it's safe to say, because the first flight took place in this area.
In a field.
Yeah.
Ended up in the field.
I don't think it went very well. But I must say, I mean, I assume this is just an artist's impression of the interior. But I personally find that a very appealing space. I'm trying to describe this. It's got what I can only describe as, they look like very fancy and comfy office chairs. With
like a parquet floor.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just and the lighting and everything, and so many windows. It's sort of very open and stuff. I mean, I really do. I mean, I would very much enjoy being in that space.
It's missing a grand piano.
Right. Okay.
Just at one end.
Would that put them overweight? I don't know. It's
weight and balance might be an issue.
I mean, Nev, would this appeal to you as a way of getting about?
Yes, but there's too many people for my liking. Obviously, I prefer my own space, so I'd have to be jammed in one corner. But yeah, I wouldn't mind giving the Bosendorf or whatever piano it is a quick tinker whilst I'm there. Yes, I mean, well, there's lots of stuff, isn't there, at the moment? Lots of concept things going on, so we'll have to see. But I follow these things with great interest. But yeah, I think certification and all that business. There's a lot to it, isn't there?
Because I mean, when you put aside the other disaster, I'll just say the disaster that happened. I mean, like airships and things in their time, they were. Again, it was that same sort of thing, wasn't it? There's lots of space and quite a cheap way of getting about and all that kind of thing. It's just I don't know, as you say, hopefully it can get off the ground.
A couple of wags in the chat room have suggested. Arnie Carlson said, take the Airlander to Arlanda Airport. That's the
very good.
Stockholm, very good. Dirk S says Ryan Lander.
I like that.
Well.
Tony S. I was going to say Tony S has got a question for Captain Al. Do you think these will fly in strong winds,
Al? Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, as a concept, these things have been around nearly 100 years now, and was it, I don't know, 1936, 37, I think, the Hindenburg. Obviously a completely different sort of beast now, but I'm struggling to see, I mean, I know there's lots of good people behind this, and I'm struggling to see the commercial viability, but the strong wind question, well, I mean, it's a giant, sack of wind, isn't it? So it's just going to get blown around to hell in a gale. So will it fly in a strong wind? No, I doubt it, really. And obviously, if it's that strong a wind, if it can do 75 knots, it's going to go backwards. So you might book to do Liverpool to Belfast and find yourself in Nottingham.
Right.
So
nobody wants that.
well, there are some good things in Nottingham, but you got to consider the fact that you've got to be a bit flexible with your travel plans, I suppose. So probably ideal for the COVID times, Well, we'll leave when we can, and we'll take you to where it ends up, and that will be maybe.
Bit like ballooning.
Yes.
Indeed.
I mean, the airship thing I quite like, and it has a little bit of a niche, but niches are rarely hugely successful as commercial projects. So this one's been, this particular sort of variant, if you like, has been knocking around for quite a while now with quite a lot of money. So I'm struggling to see it being a goer, to be honest. I wish it was. I mean, it's great, and I'd love to have a flight in it as a passenger, and have a poke around with it, and see what she can do, as it were. But probably not a lot in reality. But put an input in, and a couple of years later, it does something. So But yeah, let's just see how this goes. But I wish them well, but I won't be investing, so I'm out.
Right, okay. Thank you, Dragon. Yes, so Stephen Ivy is saying, but what about the gas? If Al lets wind, will it mess up the weight and balance, is one of his concerns.
Well, surely if I'm on board, it will just help them. It will,
get there in half the time, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll get a bit of extra buoyancy. I mean,
right.
I'm not too happy about the idea of having a tube at my jacksie to pump it into the right place.
Right. Okay, right. The next story: heroic airpiece employees foil baby smuggling plot. Now,
do we need to explain jacksie to our international audience?
Probably not. No, I think they'll get the gist. I think we'll be all right. As I say, anyway, heroic air peace employees foil baby smuggling plot. Quick thinking air peace employees have foiled a pair of baby smugglers about to board a flight to Nigeria. The incident involving two babies.
Asaba.
Thank you very much, Asaba. In Nigeria. The incident involving two babies occurred at Nigeria's Lagos airport on Monday, the 7th of June.
Nigeria being in Africa, just in case it needs clarifying.
Thank you. Probably. My geography is terrible. I do openly admit that. It is the third time in 3 years alert air peace employees have disrupted the child trafficking trade. According to multiple Nigerian media reports, an adult male and female attempted to check in for a flight to what was that place again? Asaba, thank you, at lunchtime on Monday. With the two adults, the two adults were babies aged around 3 months. Stanley Oisla, a spokesperson for Air Peace, said check-in staff asked about the infants and became suspicious. Initially, the two passengers said that the infants belonged to them and that they were travelling to Asaba. The two adults then gave conflicting explanations to different staff that the babies were being taken to the United Kingdom to unite them with their parents, and later they said that they were sending the babies to Zimbabwe for adoption. As suspicions intensified, Air Peace security staff intervened and brought in local police. According to Vanguard News, the passengers admitted to the police that they were trafficking the babies for adoption. This isn't the first time Air Peace has foiled baby smugglers. In June 2018, alert flight attendants on a flight between Lagos and Banjul also became suspicious when a female passenger declined to breastfeed an unsettled 3-month-old. Instead, she tried to give the little boy water. The female passenger was one of two adults travelling together. When the flight crew challenged the passengers, they claimed to be taking the baby to Banjul. Is it Bangul? Am I or
Banjul.
Banjul. I was right first time. Sorry.
Yes.
Under a surrogacy deal, dissatisfied, the flight crew notified Banjul, and security personnel met the flight on arrival. On the ground, the passengers were separated and questioned. Both gave conflicting accounts of who the baby was and their relationship with it. Later, DNA testing proved no biological link. At the time, Air Peace applauded its flight crew for intervening. So Air Peace is actually an airline, then? Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
And well done on the cabin crew here.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is a lot of people smuggling that goes on around the world, much more than you would probably imagine.
Well, yeah, the story is sort of taken me a little bit by surprise. If I'm brutally honest, I guess, well, being naive, I guess. I mean, you should never be surprised by anything these days.
Mm-hmm. And the cabin crew, certainly in the airlines that I've been associated with, do get training on spotting people traffickers, and absolutely hats off to the crews at Air Peace for foiling these attempts to smuggle babies, because frankly it's abhorrent, that the very
Agreed.
concept of stealing someone's baby and then trying to sell it to someone else. So hats off to the Air Peace cabin crew. Well done.
Absolutely. Indeed. I think that's all we need to say on that, isn't it, really?
Nev, refunds.
There aren't any.
Oh.
And I don't think there should be either, my own personal opinion.
Okay.
But
interesting.
it does say that the UK launches action against Ryanair and British Airways over refunds. Britain's competition authority said on Wednesday it was launching enforcement action against Ryanair and BA over their failure to offer refunds to passengers who were barred from taking flights under lockdown rules. During COVID-19 lockdowns across Britain, instead of offering refunds to those legally unable to fly, IAG-owned British Airways offered vouchers or rebooking, and Ryanair provided the option to rebook. The Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, said that the airlines might have breached consumer law and it had opened enforcement cases against them. CMA's chief executive, Andrea Coscelli, said that the difficult environment for airlines did not mean consumers should be left unfairly out of pocket for following the law. Ryanair said it welcomed the review of its policies and that it had paid refunds in justified cases after reviewing each case. BA said it had acted lawfully at all times. It's incredible that the government is seeking to punish further an industry that is already on its knees after prohibiting airlines from meaningful flying for well over a year now, it said, saying any action taken against the industry threatens to destabilise it. The CMA said that it had written to both airlines and was seeking a resolution that might include refunds or other forms of redress for affected customers. The watchdog's enforcement action could lead to court proceedings if a company persistently fails to comply with its directives. Well, all I've got to say about that is that the airlines need the cash in the business. Otherwise, there won't be any airlines. I don't know how many times we have to point that out to the government and people like the CMA. Personally speaking, I've changed a BA flight probably 5 times now. I think the same flight. I've done it all online, and when I couldn't do that, I was phoning up one of their fantastic people in the call centre. Really easy process. Yes, I had to hang on for a while. I did not expect a refund, though, I must say, and I think if you go into this situation expecting a refund, then I think you should be prepared for disappointment. I think it's perfectly reasonable to rebook the flights, and in some cases these can be 18 months or 2 years out. So I think it's important for the airlines to keep the cash in the business right at this moment.
Do you think the reason why perhaps some people are after refunds is about their nervousness in terms of something like, say, the airline going under or something like that? I mean, because it's like you were willing to... I actually agree with you, Nev, because I'm thinking very much like along the lines, if you planned to do this trip, you're still going to want to do it when restrictions are lifted and want to go out of it. I mean, do you think perhaps people are nervous because they'd rather have their money in their account for fear of it being lost by the airline in the event of collapse?
I seem to remember some financial services and places like the RBS and a number of other banks that were right on the brink at one point, and there was queues round the block for people to draw their money out. Now, this is a slightly different situation, but I think most intelligent people will understand that the travel industry is absolutely on its knees at the moment, and it cannot not afford to have another situation where they are paying out refunds left, right and centre. Now, there's obviously some exceptional cases, and they may need to be looked at, but I just cannot see how this is sustainable in any way at all.
Agreed. Any comments, Al?
Well, I mean, I think if any people are fearful that they'll lose their money if an airline collapses, as long as they've paid by credit card, and we're talking about the UK here, then the credit card company are going to refund you. So, I mean, quite clearly I have a vested interest, so I would say that unless the circumstances are exceptional, as Nev said, please do leave your money with the airline, because frankly, if an airline collapses, as a taxpayer, you're going to be paying for it anyway. So,
true, yeah.
The concept of pulling your money out for fear of losing it, it could be potentially a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it'll just end up having a snowballing effect. So there is no doubt that the aviation industry especially, and there are certain other aspects of the travel industry in the UK, are on their knees. It's not crying wolf. This is serious stuff. Yeah. And if people are in a financial position to leave their money in the business and to do their bit, then I have no doubt that in other ways, the airlines will reward them for their loyalty.
Yeah. Well said.
So, Al, you've got the next story about a 7.6.
Yes, indeed. This comes from Flight Global, and it's a porpoising and bounce landing badly damages an Atlas Air 767. US investigators have determined that improper flare technique led to a porpoised and bounced landing at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, that's in the United States, badly damaging an Atlas Boeing 767-300ER. The aircraft had been arriving on a charter service from Frankfurt Secondary Airport, Hahn Airport, and it was transporting 240 passengers with a crew of 10 on the 27th of July 2018. The approach to runway 34 at the Joint Civil Military Peace Airport was conducted before sunrise, however, visual weather conditions prevailed. Its first officer, the flying pilot, was performing his first operational evaluation under line check, and he'd logged 16 hours on type out of a total of 2,465. As the first officer initiated the landing flare, the 767 became slightly high on the approach, and according to the carrier, the aircraft touched down with limited flare and its engines at nearly 50% of N1, which prevented the speed brakes from deploying. The flight data recorder showed that the aircraft porpoised 5 times while travelling along the runway. The inquiry says the aircraft bounced, with maximum impacts reaching about 2G, and there was a lack of appropriate bounce landing recovery procedure. As a result of the event, the aircraft's forward fuselage crown was visibly wrinkled, that's bad, with dents and creases in the skin, that's bad. It also sustained fractures and buckling to several frames and stringers, that's really bad, as well as deformation to the nose wheel bay, that's fairly bad. None of the passengers or crew were injured, but the inquiry says that the jet, we'll call that an aircraft please, because the jet is just part of the engine, was substantially damaged. Okay, so Matt, what do you think porpoising is?
Oh, I didn't realise there was going to be a quiz. Sorry. It's a form of wild animal, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So what do porpoises do? They go up and down, don't they?
Yes,
they
indeed.
So if you imagine a porpoise or a dolphin, so that's basically what this aircraft was doing, sort of going
bouncing
down
along
the runway.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
so
literally bouncing.
Yeah. So what can happen is that you can get out of sync with what's happening to the aeroplane. It's called pilot-induced oscillation. So all you end up doing is making the oscillations worse, if you like. And funnily enough, each time that the aeroplane crashes down onto the runway, it bounces back up into the sky, and it sustains a bit of damage along the way. And if you keep doing that, I think it says 5 times or whatever, then it's going to get quite damaged. So the
eventually
normal procedure.
I was going to say, Al, what is the appropriate bounced landing recovery procedure?
Okay, so if you bounce a large transport aircraft, the appropriate procedure is to go around, because whatever you do other than that is just going to make things worse. So if you bounce, full power, and fly the aeroplane away, have a chat about it, and then have another go. So we see here in the dialogue that this was a first officer under training, and he was basically doing his first real landing, if you like, on the aeroplane with passengers. So he may well have done training on an empty aeroplane, but obviously a loaded aeroplane will be heavier. So whilst the technique remains the same, some of the thought that goes into it is slightly modified. So heavy aeroplanes perform slightly different to light aeroplanes. Obviously, the heavier the aeroplane, the more momentum it has, and also the greater inertia. But I'm afraid it's not the first officer's fault. This all has to rest on the shoulders of the line check captain, because he's the one who signed for it, and he's the one who's been, given the extra bucks to do the training. and I'm afraid he had his finger up his jacksie at this particular point, and when it bounced for the first time, that should have been it. It should have been full
Take
power
charge,
and out of there.
I was going to say, actually, Al, because this is the thing. I mean, as an inexperienced person, I mean, we know I'm a nervous flyer anyway. And this is the thing. It was just like, as you say, like as a first officer doing this, my gut reaction, having done, all right, not aviation training, but I've done other forms of training when it comes to vehicles and things like that. If something doesn't quite go wrong, what you would normally do, you wouldn't like say keep having a go. You would sort of stop and try again, if you like, which I guess is what we're referring to here in terms of your go around. You sort of like, it bounces on the runway. So his instructions, I mean, we weren't there, so there may have been, reasons perhaps why this course of action was chosen. But as you say, I do feel that it's not all on the first officer, as you say. This.
I would, I mean, I'm always, sort of at the risk of being criticised. I wasn't there. I don't know all the circumstances. So all that as a caveat. And obviously, I'm not rated on the 767, so I speak generically here. But I would lay at least 90% of the blame on the captain for this, because you as a training captain, you are programmed to expect things to go wrong. And to deal with it quickly. Okay, that's your job. Okay,
yeah.
You're not supposed to be sat there fat, dumb, and happy, and expecting the guy on the other seat to nail it.
Yeah, it's his first
You
flight.
are primed. Yeah, you are primed for it to go wrong. That's your job.
Yeah.
So as soon as it starts to go wrong, you have to do something.
Yeah.
Can't put it any simpler than that.
Nev, what was your question?
I was going to ask Al. I mean, this. Again, we weren't there, so we're just reading the précis of
report.
It. But it seems to have landed with a lot of energy, and with the engines at nearly 50% N1, that is going like the clappers, really. I don't know what the airspeed or final landing speed was, but it would seem that the captain should have had a bit of notice about that because of the lack of flare.
Yeah, I mean, the landing of any passenger transport aircraft, cargo transport aircraft, is obviously one of the most critical phases of flight, okay? And even just as a regular line shag, not as a training captain, you were sat there basically monitoring what the other guy does. And it's the same vice versa to a lesser extent. As a first officer or as a co-pilot, call them whatever you will. When the other guy is polling the aircraft around, you have to be prepared to, intervene if necessary. Now, that obviously doesn't happen too often from a first officer to a captain, not because 4 stripes makes you God, but typically 4 stripes means that you've got a little bit more experience and know-how. Not
and
always,
and that's the key here, isn't it? Really, as you say, the first officer should, all right, he made a mistake, and that's obviously disappointing for everybody who was involved in their training. But as you say, at the end of the day, this is the first time that they've done that. It clearly states that in the report. It's the first time they've done that with passengers there for a full load, and obviously cases and passengers and all that kind of thing. But
so one of the factors here. And I can spring this out long enough so that we don't have to do the military, obviously, is a phenomena that we see quite often, which is because this happened before sunrise, so we can call that dawn or night, whichever way you want to do it, but in the hours of darkness or semi-darkness, and it's a night rush, and that is as you're coming into land. If you're inexperienced, you will feel that you're going very, very fast because the runway lights are sort of coming at you quite quickly. And there is a natural tendency to want to kind of pull away from that. So this to me is exactly what I see. So, the aircraft became slightly high on the approach. And we don't know at what point this is talking about. But night rush is a really well-known phenomena where you just get this sort of like nervy sensation that you're, driving yourself towards the ground at high speed. And I mean, to be fair, you're going quite quickly. You're doing, 150 miles an hour. So it's pretty quick. and when lights are coming rushing towards you. So you do get that sensation of real speed. So that to me is another one of those, little, mental preparations for, Milado sat in the left-hand seat there. Take your finger out your jacksie and be prepared for this, because the young lad in the right seat, he's potentially going to be, crapping himself for this.
Yes, so, I can imagine, yeah.
So you've got to be prepared for that. And so, as I've said, that this... What the first officer has done is what I would be expecting any first officer to do on their first few landings on the aeroplane. I mean, bearing in mind here that they've flown, from Frankfurt to somewhere in the United States. So this isn't a 20-minute jolly. So they're going to be at the low ebb of their arousal curve. They're going to be a little bit tired. I don't know how many other pilots were on the flight. It doesn't say. But when you're a bit tired, and by virtue of how this has worked out, if they've arrived dawn, they've certainly not been flying at the nicest time of the day or night. So you have to make allowances for the guy on the right. You with the 4 stripes, you've got to man up a bit here.
Yeah.
And okay, so you weren't smart enough to realise it was going wrong when it was going wrong, but as soon as it went wrong, do something about it. Don't just let the aeroplane smack itself into the ground repeatedly until something gives up.
No, indeed. And Dirk S is actually offering a couple of bits of information here, saying that this hard landing went wrong long before touchdown. I think, which I think that's fair comment, isn't it? Really. And then John Jester is saying that trying to cushion the blow, they worry about tail strikes a lot in the 767-300. And yes, Dirk is enjoying listening to your live opinions, by the way, Al.
Okay, well, that's nice to hear. Thank you, Dirk.
Indeed.
Not everybody does.
Well, we do, very much so. But Nev, we better move on, yes.
Nev, we're moving on to Branson and your favourite chap, Bezos.
Yes. Now, this is on the Ars Technica website, not Ars Technica, as our producer has put in the show notes. Just a point of order there. However, it does say that Amazon founder Jeff Bezos said on Monday he, along with his brother Mark and an auction winner, would fly on the first human space flight.
Did you know that Ars Technica is Latin for the art of technology?
I did know that. But Ars Technica...
Is that because you're reading the same notes as me?
It's something entirely different, which we can't go into before the watershed.
For goodness sake.
Are we on time?
No, we're not. Yeah. We were supposed to be at this point like before 8 o'clock. But anyway.
I've not noticed. Is Jonathan Warner in the chat?
He is, yes, he is, yes. Absolutely. He's horrified. Anyway, Nev, do please...
Carry on, Nev.
Yes. Keep going.
Well, these three are going to fly on the first human space flight of his company's New Shepard spacecraft. This mission is going to launch from Blue Origin's spaceport in West Texas on July the 20th, which is the anniversary of the Apollo 11 lunar landing in 1969. With this timeline, Bezos seems
almost... Were they able
almost...
to offer a cheaper deal than NASA at Kennedy or something? Then, do you just put it out to tender? Well, we won't want to put something into space, so, if you've got a spaceport near you, let us know.
Perhaps it's one of those Amazon special deals.
No.
What, a lightning offer that if you don't subscribe now, tough, you'll never see it again.
Okay.
Interesting.
It's not going to work, Al, by the way. Whatever happens, we are...
Oh, trust me, I can make it work. Oh, trust me.
Well,
carry on, Nev. I'm sorry, I'll keep quiet for a while.
No, not at all. But with this timeline, Bezos seems almost certain to beat his suborbital space tourism rival, Sir Richard Branson, into space. Setting aside whether Branson's VSS Unity vehicle reaches space, its maximum altitude is just below the Kármán line, or 100 kilometres. This is nonetheless a meaningful milestone. Both Bezos and Branson have been investing in the space industry for about 2 decades, and both men have made clear they intend to fly on their own spacecraft as soon as practically possible. For Branson, that flight was expected to come during the second half of this year. As recently as 1 week ago, Branson's Virgin Galactic told Ars Technica that the company's plan next called for a test flight with 4 employees in the passenger cabin. That said, she added, this will be followed by a flight carrying Branson. However, the Bezos space flight scheduled for July the 20th may have scrambled those plans. According to a report by Doug
Do you think the insurers stopped Branson going on the first flight?
Well, he has got a bit of previous, hasn't he? With space travel and high altitude business. So, yes. What was that company? It was someone like Keyman Insurance, wasn't it? Back in the day, where, you know, if you had someone really important as part of the company, you had to take out special insurance. But, well, we'll see. I wonder what his premiums are for this. But according to a report by Doug Messier on his...
Speaking about key men, Jonathan Warner had a bet with me earlier as to whether we'd actually make it to the military or not.
Well, I can confirm we are not going to, unless we overrun by an hour.
Yes, which is definitely on the
Carry
cards.
on, Nev.
But it says that Virgin Galactic is working on a plan to send Branson on a suborbital flight aboard the VSS Unity Spaceship 2 rocket over the 4th of July holiday weekend. That would beat Bezos by a couple of weeks. It is plausible that if the May 22nd flight went well, no, that's not right, is it? That must be the June 22nd flight went well.
But it did actually took place, yeah.
That's right. It was last month, wasn't it?
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So when that flight seems to have gone well on May the 22nd.
Well, there was nothing in the Daily Mail about it. So
no, that's
That must
true.
have been fine, yeah.
Yeah. The VSS Unity spacecraft and its carrier aircraft could be ready to fly again by early July. However, Messier notes to fly Branson, Virgin Galactic must also obtain a commercial reusable spacecraft operator's license from the Federal Aviation Administration. Now, from what I've heard, you don't want to be in a rush with the FAA, so I think getting stuff out the door quickly
Started it last year, yeah.
is a bit of a non-starter, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, especially, well, again, it's just all these new things, isn't it? This type rating and stuff like that. It's I mean, it's definitely an interesting project. I mean, and I know loads of people, you know, and because as you say, like using Branson as an example, obviously, I mean, you know, rather enjoys being the first to do these things, as you say, but I wouldn't fancy being an insurance company. In fact, I dare say some of these things take place uninsured, don't they?
Unlimited mileage.
Yeah, indeed.
I have no doubt, but I probably suspect that there will be people within the various organisations who are going to say, look, you know, from a commercial point of view, if you sit yourself on the first of these and it goes spectacularly wrong, it doesn't matter whether you survive it or not. The business might not survive afterwards. So,
yes.
So yeah, I mean, there are lots of commercial pressures, and I mean, to be honest, most things are insurable, but it just depends on how much money you want to pay, doesn't it, for that premium? So, should we go around the table? I mean, Nev, do you fancy going into space?
Definitely not. No, that's not my thing at all.
Okay. Matt?
You already know the answer to that question. You don't need to ask.
Yeah,
you can't get me on an ordinary aeroplane. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll throw in a little space skydive as well, shall we? That'll help. Yeah.
What about you, Carlos? Would you go on one of these missions?
In about 40 years' time, yeah.
In about
I'm talking about. Well, yeah. I mean, July. We're talking July. So you know, if by perchance, you know, I got you a slot in July, would you do it?
Do you know what? For the sake of the show, I would do it.
Right. Well, yeah, but
what a man!
If you think that's going to work on me, you've got another thing coming.
I would take Nev's all singing and dancing camera.
No, you
I'd
wouldn't.
take the Tascam, and I would.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What did Nev's camera do wrong? Honestly, what did Nev do wrong?
It's suitable for operating in weightless environments either.
Well, no, quite, absolutely. Although there's no tapes anymore, so it's less of an
true.
issue than it used to be. Quite. Anyway.
So last story. in the commercial
we're
news
moving
this
on
week.
then, are we?
Yes,
Okay,
we are.
fair enough.
Last story in the commercial news segment this week is
He's definitely up to something.
from dunmobroadcast.co.uk, and well, it's Ted's 100th birthday.
Good old Ted.
I don't know who Ted is, but anyway, he's celebrating a lifetime in aviation. A 100-year-old pilot from Stansted was treated to a Boeing 737 flight sim experience for his birthday. Ted Barrett, who was born on May the 21st, 1921, when flight had only just started to happen, began his career in the cadets before becoming a Royal Air Force engineer in World War II. To thank Ted for a lifetime of service in both military and civil aviation, Andrewsfield Flying Club near Great Saling arranged a Boeing 737 simulator experience under the guidance of club director Mike Rowland. Mike said Ted had been an inspiration. He comes up to Andrewsfield often, so he's a well-known and well-respected character in aviation. Ted repaired Wellington bombers in India during World War II. He later trained as a pilot with the Royal Air Force in Cambridge using the Tiger Moth and Oxford aircraft. When the Royal Air Force Reserve Group was disbanded in 1953, he gained his civil pilot licence to continue flying. He was due to fly a real-life 1930s Tiger Moth on his birthday, but 40-mile-an-hour gusts grounded Ted and his team.
Yeah, sorry about that, Ted. Couldn't be helped.
Instead, he flew a virtual Boeing 737 out of Stansted Airport using a simulator at Andrewsfield Aerodrome. Oh, I might have to take a trip there myself. Have a go.
Oh, it's a cracking place. I have to say that Andrewsfield Flying Club has been around for quite a long period of time. And it is a proper club, and they have a really nice setting there. And I don't know if she's still working, but there's a lady there, an instructor called Carol Cooper, if I remember rightly, and she's got gazillions of instructing hours. She's been probably one of the country's leading flying instructors for years and years. So yeah, great place, and do pop in. They'll give you a warm welcome. They have nice chips.
So the story goes on the plane. It says here the Tiger Moth biplane, registration Golf Alpha Oscar Echo India, is owned by Cambridge Flying Club, where Ted is an honorary member. It is one of the new few Tiger Moths still operating which saw active service in World War II. The 1930s plane was part of a communication squadron in France, completing expeditions on the continent ahead of Operation Dynamo in Dunkirk in 1940. Ted's flight in the aircraft will be fitting, they said, an Andrewsfield Flying Club spokesperson, and 2 World War II veterans will be reunited. So there we go. A nice story to finish the commercial.
Fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, I do actually.
100-year-old. I wonder how he got on the sim with the 737.
I'd love some video footage of it. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Because I bet he absolutely nailed it.
Okay, probably did actually.
And there we go. Yes. Okay. Let's move.
There, folks, ended a beautiful friendship.
I was going to say I was going to go in the sim tomorrow, but I can't. I'm doing a radio show. Anyway,
you are, yes. Anyway, yeah.
So we have got.
Go on, guys. Just plug the show one more time.
No.
Give us the whole URL, the hours that you're on. Tell us what you're going to be playing.
Parkradio.co.uk/player. But anyway, right. So we have a very lovely video from Armando here, don't we?
Yes, we do. So we've got a video from Armando. So this continues on from last week. If you're watching last week, you may have saw that Armando talking to Lieutenant Colonel Ivan Deroche of the 403rd Wing 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron about active storm reconnaissance or hurricane hunting in the WC-130J. So if you're ready, Matt, hit the button.
The WC.
All right, guys. I'm here with Lieutenant Colonel Ivan Deroche, right?
Yes.
Sir, what outfit are you part of?
I'm part of the 403rd Wing, 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron, Keesler Air Force Base, Mississippi. Most people know us as the world famous hurricane hunter.
I was kind of joking with him, saying he walks around with a bow and arrow just hunting hurricanes, right? Is that now? There can't be that many units that do hurricane hunting, right?
Well, there's only one military unit. There used to be more squadrons when active duty shared the mission, but in 1993 it became an all Air Force Reserve mission.
Okay.
And then NOAA has their hurricane hunters. They do atmospheric research worldwide, year-round, and they also go into hurricanes in their 2 P3s for some research. But our main job is the active reconnaissance of storms that threaten the U.S.
Okay, so that's the big difference between the P3 and the C-130 is you guys are getting real-time data or near real-time data
Near real-time,
from the storm.
Yeah, everything that we collect goes out on an average about every 10 minutes to the National Hurricane Center. So it's fresh when it gets there.
Yeah. Now tell us a little bit. So you have the MC-130, or this is a C-130J,
WC-130J.
Right? WC-130J.
So what makes it different than any other C-130J is we retain the navigator because we fly in bad weather. A guy primarily on the radar for safety of flight's big deal. And then we put some weather equipment in the back, a couple smart dudes that know how to use that stuff, and it turns into a WC-130 instead of a C-130. The weather palettes the plane can be deconfigured in about 6 to 8 hours. Everything can roll off, and then it's a standard C-130J ready for whatever cargo missions out there.
Okay. Now, how long have you guys been flying the J model for?
So they showed up at Keesler in 1998, and that began the test of the J model program. And we started flying, I think it was 99 was the first test for the Hurricane.
Okay, so it's been a while. Huh?
And then we went full up conversion from the H to the J when Katrina hit us in 2005. We were kind of using both planes for at that time, and then after Keesler got wiped out, and we just said, that's it, H models are gone, it's a J model game.
Wow. So did you notice a pretty big difference going from the H to the J model?
There is
Especially
a big difference.
Storm, right?
Well, we don't have the flight engineer anymore. In the legacy airplane, it was all steam gauges and dials. A lot of stuff to monitor. You know, the flight engineer was focused on systems. Well, all that's maintained by the mission computers now, and you get the ACAWS warning systems like most modern airplanes. So the flight engineer's gone. We did retain the navigator for safety of flight in storms. Yeah. And then the performance is totally different. Engines are more powerful, of course. They're new, more modern. The propeller design changed from the old 4-blade Hamilton standard to the carbon fiber propeller, so they're much more efficient. And then the engines, obviously, more efficient and more powerful. So our cruise speed's about 30 knots faster, but the big difference is the fuel flow. We're getting that at about 1,500 pounds an hour less.
Okay.
So that's significant.
So what's a typical either range or time frame that you're flying when you're doing a...
So if we're going for endurance, going to hang out and fly as long as we can somewhere, you can get a little over 14 hours with the externals. And our typical hurricane mission is somewhere around 11, give or take, hours. Okay. You know, it's very common to see 12, 12 and a half. We show 2 hours before. We brief, we do all our stuff, figure out where we're going, what we're doing. And then our en route time plus our 5 to 6 hours loitering in the hurricane and back. Wow. You know, it'll be a 12-hour mission.
So is that pretty fatiguing? So you're doing 5-6 hours inside the storm. What's that like, flying a C-130 inside the storm?
That's the tough part to explain, because it's like, all right, aviation guys, continuous light, occasional moderate, and occasion holy crap. So it's obviously a lot of rain. Yeah. Hurricane flights are done at 10,000 feet pressure. So they're low pressure systems. The stronger they are, the deeper the pressure. So on the radar altimeter, our absolute altitude in a Cat 5 hurricane will be like 6,500 feet, even though the pressure altimeter is still saying 10.
Goodness.
But we fly standard weather altitudes. 9,900 happens to be one. Yeah. And we hang out at 10 because when we release the weather instruments through them, the weatherman in the back wants it to fall through that standard altitude. So we stay 100 feet above.
So do you notice is there a pretty significant difference between, say, a Cat 3 or a Cat 5 flying a hurricane, or is a hurricane and each one's got its own?
They all got their own name and their own personality.
Yeah.
So the things that really affect turbulence is any interaction with terrain. So when we're in the Caribbean and we're at 10,000 feet pressure, but if you're flying something that's near Haiti where the mountains are 9,000 feet, you get a lot of mechanical mountain wave type turbulence as a result of that. Those are the things when you're downwind of the mountains, you really need to think about that because it will beat you up just like mountain wave turbulence and it can damage the plane. But typically, it's sustained light for 5 to 6 hours, some moderate. The eye wall area, the last 30 miles on your run in and your first 30 miles getting out of the eye, that's the most intense thunderstorms. It's the eye wall structure. Everybody's familiar with that. And that's the bumpiest. Well, we're only in it for 10 minutes. We're doing 3 miles a minute, 180 knots indicated when we're flying the storm. That's our rough airspeed. And so 10 minutes of the moderate to occasional severe in the eye is clear. You look up, you'll see blue skies during the day, you
It's
see
like the
stars
movies,
at
huh?
night. Yeah, yep. And then back in it for another thick 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then after that, it just depends on the banding of the storm and how physically large they are.
Yeah.
Some hurricanes, the average hurricane, we fly 105 miles from our run-in into the center, and then 105 miles outbound on the inner cardinal heading. So we'll start northeast, go to southwest. We always make a left turn and take the tailwind to the other corner and come back and do it again. So we'll do that 4 to 5 times in our mission profile. We're back in the center every hour and 30, 40 minutes, depending on how much tailwind you get on that crosswind leg. And most hurricanes, the hurricane force winds will go out maybe 50, 60, 70 miles.
Okay.
And then, the TS winds drop off from there. Occasionally you get a storm like Hurricane Katrina. Massive. The hurricane force winds went out 125 miles. The tropical storm winds went out 175 miles. Yeah. So all of our standard, how we treat a storm and we fly it, all that had to change.
So from a mission planning standpoint, are you getting that from satellite data, or are you literally just high-fiving with the crew before you to...
The best intel is the guys that are just getting out of it, the data from the last storm. So a typical profile, the Hurricane Hunter aircraft are running 6 hours in the storm, 6 hours off, and 6 hours in the storm until it gets within 300 miles of U.S. coastline. And then the Hurricane Center wants us in there all the time. So we'll fly 6 hours and we're getting out and the next guy's coming right in behind us. So until it makes landfall or turns away and it's no longer a threat, we're always in it when it's within 300 miles of the U.S. coast.
Now you guys have a weather officer on board, correct?
Right. So the weather officer is an Air Force meteorologist by trade, and then they come to us, and there's no school for it, so our squadron is the schoolhouse for the hurricane hunting. So whatever your crew position is, whatever mission training you need, it happens in-house. And weather officers are the tough ones, because pilots, you send them to Little Rock to go through C-130J school, and then they just come to Keesler and learn a little bit about risk mitigation and flying through bad weather, and you get some on-the-job training in the hurricane, and then you're good. Well, the weather guy, it's totally different for them. They're learning in the hurricane environment, because all the Met systems are usually a weather station somewhere on the ground, where now you're in this moving thing, shaking, trying to take readings on screens that are, vibrating and bouncing. So their job's different.
I love that you just said that the pilots come in, they learn how to fly in a hurricane. A couple weeks, they're good. That's awesome.
Literally, most of the pilots when they about 90 days for mission training, and literally that's just a couple weeks.
Well, and Colonel Ragusa was talking about, there's no other replacement. There's no sim for flying through a hurricane, right?
No, there's not.
You just got to get in there and do it, right?
And the biggest thing is, most pilots, they pay attention to the radar to avoid weather. Mm-hmm. Well, we're paying attention to the radar with the nav to figure the softest spot to penetrate the weather the whole 6 hours. You know? Most people is like, I might have to cross a line, find the soft spot, or I might turn around and go the other way, deviate and go around it. Well, that doesn't work for us.
That's amazing. So, and you guys are probably flying with a relief. So a relief pilot also, right?
We do our best. That's one of our risk mitigators. Is we try to take a third pilot so you can rotate through the seats and get some rest. But I mean, Air Force rules, we can have 2 pilots on a 16-hour crew day. And as long as both autopilots
standard mobility rules.
Yeah, standard mobility rules.
So you brought in some of the risk management. What are some of the risks, either through mission planning? What are those real risks that are to the crew, to the airplane when you're flying in a storm?
Okay. Well, lightning's a big one. We do get struck by lightning on occasion. The toughest part about lightning is seeing a signature on a radar. You don't have one. You know, a lot of the eyeballs are used. Tough to see it in the day when you're IMC all the time. Nighttime, when you're making a run in on an active eye wall, it's like strobe lights. It's just lightening up. You just know it's there. Lightning's a big one. The eye wall structure itself, you're gonna have to ask one of the weather scientists, but there's vortices inside the eye wall, similar to a small tornado, and they present as a hook echo. So obviously, we're paying particular attention to make sure we avoid anything like that. And when a storm is dying, it's some of its most turbulent features in the eye wall, especially when it's getting filled in with dry air. The weather guys call it dry air entrainment, when dry air's coming in and killing the hurricane.
Yeah.
That's when it's some of its most turbulent times in the eye wall is when it's dying like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Inside, we were taking the tour, and it looks surprisingly like any other C-130, like a slick C-130, except for those 2 stations up front.
It's exactly like every other C-130J, except those roll-on stations.
Yeah.
They bolt to the floor, and you hook up the cable into the junction boxes on the side of the airplane, and now it's a WC.
And he does, and the loadmaster does get to shoot a cannon, right?
So they go through the loadmaster training like any other C-130 loadmaster. And then we do in-house training. They get trained to basically a basic weather observer level. And they drop the drops on, so they need to understand the weather code and whether or not it's good data that's coming back to the aircraft and how to QC it and eliminate something that's really an erroneous data from the data stream.
That's great. So if somebody wanted to get involved, so you said it's essentially a reserve.
It's
a
all
unit,
reserve,
right?
Air Force Reserve, yep.
So if somebody wanted to get involved, would they, well, first of all, where would they go to find that? Probably just Google Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunters,
Air Force
right?
Reserve, so we're military, so
Yeah.
you're going to have to deal with recruiters.
Yeah.
If you're coming in off the street, you're dealing with recruiters. If you're in the Air Force, then there's ways to be gained by another Air Force Reserve unit, whether you're transferring from active duty or Guard or Reserve. You know, the guys inside don't know how to get to your unit. But outside, you're dealing with a recruiter, and because we're a small special mission, we also interview. I mean, people need to understand what they're getting into. I mean, it's not a job for everybody.
Well, I mean, off the top of my head, the only 2 special mission C-130 units I can really think of is you guys and the guys out of New York with the skis, right? Like,
Well, there's actually a couple more. There's guys that fly the firefighting missions. The Colorado Springs Air Force Reserve C-130s.
Okay.
They're a special mission. They do MAFS, the aerial firefighting. And the guys up in Youngstown, another Air Force Reserve unit, do the aerial spray for spray, like when they had the oil spill, spraying the things to dissolve the oil and stuff in the Gulf. They do aerial spray missions. So those are also Air Force Reserve special missions.
And that's exactly why we do this sort of podcast is, you know, I think every month I discover this new niche, this new corner of aviation where you go, man, that would be so cool to do that, huh?
Yeah, this is definitely different.
Yeah.
You know, did Colonel Ragusa tell you how it started?
No.
Okay, so in 1944, U.S. Army Air Corps guys are training Brits how to fly. You know, they're doing their basic pilot training during World War II down in South Texas. And there was a hurricane out in the Gulf, and the Brit pilot told Joe Duckworth, the Army Air Corps pilot, hey, I bet you can't fly that little T-6 Texan into that hurricane out there. And Joe Duckworth said, hold my beer and watch this. And that's how hurricane hunting was born. He and his navigator went out. They flew through the hurricane. They got into the middle of it, and they came back, and they told the base weather guy about it. He's like, no kidding, really? And they took the weather guy for a ride. A little T-6 Texan, you know, single-engine trainer.
Yeah.
And they came back, and that's the birth of hurricane hunting.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, we always finish each interview with one question, and that is, if money was no object,
Okay.
and you could fly any airplane in the world, past or present or future, what would that airplane be?
You know, when I was a kid, it was always the Blackbird. You had to watch
Yeah.
the SR-71. It was really cool, you know. And I think that'd probably be the one.
Yeah.
I don't know, P-51 Mustang's pretty cool,
That would
too,
be
if
pretty
you're
cool.
nostalgic.
Yeah, there's a couple around here in the Charlotte area, P-51s, and every time, you know, I'm trying to hand my card over there, see if I can get on one. So SR-71 Blackbird, you know,
that'd be
amazing
cool.
choice. And I know there was just recently some articles about F-117s coming back, and they're still using them, so maybe there's still a shot.
Maybe a shot. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Awesome, sir. I
Yeah.
appreciate the time.
Oh,
Thank you
bet.
so much.
Anytime.
Well, welcome to our London studios. Welcome to the A320 Lounge webinar tech presentation, obviously for the 320 series.
Welcome to the A320 and 737 Lounge, bringing technical refresher courses directly to you. Using our cutting-edge broadcasting facilities, enjoy a fully interactive technical refresher course from the comfort of your own home. All of our webinars are live, and you can ask your instructor a question at any point during the day. All of our instructors are highly experienced and can help you. No more expensive nights away from home, no new software required, just an internet connection. Courses are run at regular intervals, so check out A320 Lounge and 737lounge.com for more details.
Okay, thank you, Armando. Great part. It was great to see those again, actually, wasn't it? Great to see them.
Yeah, I'm just glad we don't have that kind of heavy sort of storms over in the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, the most we muster here is a bit of a rough thunderstorm and
the odd clap of thunder
a few
here and there,
claps of
don't
thunder,
we?
yeah.
Absolutely.
Nothing that sort of needs an aircraft to
We
fly.
say clap on this show.
Apparently, we can
Yes,
say
we clap you, Al. Happy anniversary.
absolutely.
Happy anniversary.
Things have moved on.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, but, yeah.
So
I'm just drunk now. I don't care anymore.
we haven't got any Armando this week, but we still have got some military news. And Armando's pre-recorded these for us, which is very kind of him, being he's a very busy man. But he has pre-recorded these, so if everyone's ready, let's go with some military news.
Guys, in this first military story, the U.S. Air Force is evaluating the use of electric vertical takeoff and landing, or eVTOL, aircraft for missions like medical evacuation and search and rescue. Officials at the Air Force Research Lab reported that AFWERX, Agility Prime, and a California-based company named Kitty Hawk reached a milestone in May for their first operational exercise. Lieutenant Colonel Martin Salinas, the mission design team lead in the Air Force Operational Test and Evaluation Center, said that this exercise produced important data that will bolster the program going forward. The technology and companies in the AFWERX Agility Prime program continue to mature rapidly, with this new partner, Kitty Hawk, joining the government and industry team. In this first program exercise, a diverse group of industry and government operators, engineers, and test professionals assessed the ability to do medical evacuation, personnel recovery, and logistics with Kitty Hawk's eVTOL aircraft. The Kitty Hawk team also demonstrated the Heavyside's remote flying capabilities. Sebastian Thrun, the Kitty Hawk CEO, said, "The world is going to need new modes of transportation, and Heavyside is one path to get us there. We are excited to be working with Agility Prime and look forward to our continued collaboration as we bring eVTOLs to more people." Founded in 2010, the company is based in California. They've developed numerous eVTOL vehicles, including the Heavyside vehicle, named after the English engineer Oliver Heavyside. Designed to be fast, small, quiet, and green, the aircraft flies at up to 180 miles per hour with a potential range of 100 miles plus reserves on a single charge. That's according to Kitty Hawk's website. Heavyside takes off and lands in a 30-foot by 30-foot space and reaches sound levels of 38 decibels at 1,000 feet. That is 100 times quieter than any helicopter and requires less than half of the energy per mile of a conventional electric car. The Lieutenant Colonel said that the Agility Prime and Kitty Hawk teams facilitated the convergence of Air Force and Marine Corps testers and operators to engage with Heavyside, all while experimenting within the context of personnel recovery and logistics as use case scenarios. So I'm sure we will see more and more of these experiments with electric aircraft as we continue to see them develop.
There we go. Thank you, Armando.
Thank you, Armando.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very important, I tell you, that story, right? When you look at it, right, when you're in the combat zone and you want to evacuate injured people,
yeah,
and you don't want the enemy to hear the helicopters flying in to pick up the injured people,
right?
Using these electric
they'll hear them
medevac,
from space? No,
they wouldn't. They're a lot quieter, so it's a hell of a lot more.
I'm afraid
safer.
I don't associate any form of military vehicle with quiet.
With electric or quiet,
quiet.
Yeah.
I think in general. Can we talk about the picture that he sent for us to put up with all of these pictures? By the way, I mean honestly. Honestly, the life he has.
He's a terrible life he does.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, he's earned the right, I know, because let's be honest, he was in the Air Force for I don't know how long. But anyway.
So the next one Armando's got for us this week is all about the Navy's new tanker drone.
Goodness.
From military.com, the Navy's new tanker drone just refueled a Super Hornet fighter jet for the first time. During the test, the fighter tailed the drone, known as the MQ-25T1. It steadied itself at the proper airspeed before attaching to the drone's probe and drogue system, according to a Navy release. The T1 then transferred fuel from the aircraft from its aerial refueling store pod, fastened under its wing, according to photos which accompanied this release. Rear Admiral Brian Corey, the Program Executive Officer for Unmanned Aviation and Strike Weapons, said that this flight lays the foundation for integration into the carrier environment, allowing for greater capability towards manned-unmanned teaming concepts. The MQ-25 will greatly increase the range and endurance of future carrier air wings, equipping our Navy aircraft carriers with additional assets well into the future. Service leaders announced in November that they wanted to base a squadron of 20 MQ-25A tanker drones, which they expect to revolutionize carrier air wings at Naval Base Ventura County in Point Mugu, California. The Navy is studying how the drone, capable of not only refueling aircraft in flight, but also conducting intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance programs, how that will improve carrier air wing operations. It will be the Pentagon's first operational carrier-based unmanned aircraft. The service first experimented with the semi-autonomous Northrop Grumman-made X-47B prototype in 2015, making it the first unmanned aircraft it refueled in flight. In that exercise, the unmanned combat aerial vehicle received fuel from a Boeing 707 tanker. The Navy ultimately shelved the X-47 program following those initial tests and the two drones that it had in its inventory. Navy leaders have called the Stingray a game changer for carrier operations, since it will free up manned tankers to perform other missions. The MQ-25 is expected to conduct refueling for deployed Super Hornets, EA-18 Growlers, and the service's F-35C Joint Strike Fighter. The Boeing Navy teams will now analyze the data from the first flight, such as air-wake interactions, and how the aircraft may improve other flight parameters according to the release. The teams will determine whether future adjustments are needed, such as software updates to assist in operations. Potential modifications are not expected to disrupt follow-on tests, according to the Navy.
Wow.
It's all getting very drony now with all these unmanned things. I mean, is this what's going to be dominating now the news stories
all
with military?
Very drony.
Well, you know, unmanned. All right, unmanned aerial vehicles.
Who do you think you are,
UAVs.
Captain?
You've just been rude towards. I thought you'd been rude towards Armando. Then I was going to say there's an awful lot of work for the show, and you call him very drony.
Very trust me, Al. Armando could drone on for about 3 hours and would still have a full chat
yes,
room
we
and
would
audience
very much
of people.
so, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. It's but we do really appreciate him taking the time, because his diary is ridiculous at the moment. I mean, it's just yeah. And I'm complaining about having to get up at 4 a.m. for 1 week. I mean, honestly.
So moving on to the next of Armando's little bits of audio for the military this week.
Oh yes.
And
let the show down once again.
This one is from the AIN Online, and this is all about the US Air Force retiring the last Open Skies aircraft.
Guys, this next military story from AIN Online, the U.S. Air Force retires its last Open Skies aircraft. On June 4th, the 45th Reconnaissance Squadron of the 55th Wing at Offutt Air Force Base near Omaha, Nebraska, held a ceremony to officially retire the last of its OC-135s. The aircraft 61-2670 was due to fly into storage at the Boneyard at Davis-Monthan just a few days later. A total of 3 OC-135s were produced, beginning with a single aircraft in an interim fit, which entered service in October of 1993. It was followed by 2 aircraft in full mission configuration. Tail number 670 was one of those aircraft, and in May 1996 it began flying its peacetime reconnaissance and arms treaty verification flights on behalf of the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, or DTRA, many of which were over Russia. For the treaty monitoring mission, the OC-135s were modified with 4 cameras in the rear fuselage, comprising of 1 vertical and 2 oblique framing cameras used for low-altitude photography, and 1 panoramic camera for high-altitude photography. Typically, the missions with 35 personnel consisting of a flight crew, DTRA crew members, and representatives from the host nation and a maintenance crew. The latter was an integral element of the mission, as the aircraft operated for extended periods within the host nation. The OC-135s received some avionics upgrades that ensured compliance with ICAO-mandated global air traffic management regulations. As well as its open skies duties, the aircraft also performed other survey and humanitarian work, notably in the wake of the earthquake that devastated Haiti in 2010. By the time of its retirement, tail number 670 had amassed more than 36,500 flight hours in the course of more than 13,000 sorties. It was one of the last C-135s in the U.S. service, powered by the Pratt & Whitney TF-33 low bypass ratio turbofans, with which it was delivered.
I mean, yeah, incredible stuff again. I love it. In fact, actually, Mr. Warner's just sent me a photograph, which has only just come through. Otherwise, I would actually pop it up for you. I will try and do that. While Carlos talks about it, I will try and do that. He was saying that he saw that exact. Jonathan saying, I saw that exact aircraft in the UK a couple of years ago at Bryce Norton, which is quite cool.
Yeah, you can tell this one. Obviously, this looks completely different from the usual kind of 707 guys that you see here at Mildenhall with the all grey, because this has got the white top fuselage on this one.
Because they ran out of paint.
Yes, because they ran out of paint, and also the engine nacelles are also all painted white as well, as opposed to all grey. So, yes, thank you for that, Jonathan Warner. Nice to see you in the chat room. And also, we're going to make a quick mention, aren't we, Nev, to a listener as well over in Australia.
Yes, poor old Ray. He's back in hospital again. So let's hope they fix whatever's wrong this time round, Ray. And very best wishes to you,
absolutely,
from all of us on the show.
Yeah, all the best,
absolutely, Ray. All jokes aside, I hope that. We hope that they can fix you, and if not, that they've provided you with some stunningly gorgeous nurses to look after you.
Oh, for goodness sake!
I'm sure they have.
Right, okay, fair enough.
So moving on to the bless him, Ray, you'll love that. So moving on to the last military story, you'll be pleased to know, Captain Al and Nev, this week.
Hang on. There's been far too much military here.
This one is actually going to be upsetting for Matt, because the Pentagon are shelving plans for the new Air Force 2, which of course, as we all know, is a 757. So
that's a shame. Are they going to go and sort of set fire to it?
I don't know. Armando is very kind and able to tell us all.
Air Force 2, it sounds like the latest range of vacuum cleaners from something like Shark, doesn't it?
Don't get me started on that, because we ordered a new vacuum cleaner this week and it hasn't arrived. Oh dear, Mother's devastated. She really is. Anyway, right.
Hit the button, Matt. Hit the button.
Okay, I'm on the wrong screen. There we go. Let's go.
Guys, this last story from DefenseOne.com. The Pentagon is abandoning its plans to replace its small fleet of Boeing 757s that serve as Air Force 2, the jetliners that fly the Vice President and other top-level cabinet officials. Funding for the project has been eliminated in the Air Force's fiscal year 2022 budget request, which was sent to Congress last week. According to these budget documents, after 2020, remaining funding in this effort was applied to the evaluation and maturation of advanced high-speed transport-scale aircraft, with the potential to expand the defense industrial base and serve as C-32 replacements at the appropriate time. Last year, the Air Force awarded contracts to develop fast-moving executive transport planes to 3 startup companies, Exosonic and Boom Supersonic, which are developing supersonic passenger jets, and Hermes, which is developing a hypersonic passenger aircraft. The nixing of these Air Force 2 replacements come 3 months after General Jacqueline Van Ovost, head of Air Mobility Command, called the C-32A, which is the military designation for the Boeing 757, quote, a very capable aircraft. She said, "We have the executive communications on board, and we've been modifying that to ensure that our senior leaders remain connected at all times. These C-32s are also a backup to the larger VC-25, which is the Boeing 747 used by the President. Now, the President occasionally uses the C-32 to fly to airports with runways too short for the VC-25. The 757 is unique in that it can fly long distances from runways too short for larger, wide-body airplanes. Boeing stopped making the 757 in 2005. Earlier this year, the company resumed work on designing a replacement after those efforts were put on hold in 2020 as the company focused on fixing problems with the 737 MAX. 4 years ago, the C-32 was part of an Air Force and Navy study that looked at replacing VIP transports and 3 other types of command and control airplanes with a single aircraft. However, an analysis wrapped up in September 2020 and recommended no impact or actions for the C-32 fleet. Right now, we are not moving forward with any sort of combination of big airplane, single aisle that can do multiple missions for the executive airlift side, Van Ovo said. The Air Force is still moving forward with the plans to replace the E-4 National Airborne Operations Center more commonly known as the Doomsday Plane, because it can send the nuclear weapon launch codes to aircraft, missile silos, and submarines.
And then she said it's far too big and it won't fit. That's the vacuum cleaner into the cupboard, by the way.
Of course,
sorry,
absolutely.
we were having a vacuum cleaner conversation.
Yes,
that was great, Armando. I thoroughly enjoyed those. So I look forward to next week.
Anyway,
sometimes I do wish that the audience could hear the conversations. I mean, we'd never be able to broadcast again.
Can you imagine it? We'd have like we wouldn't have an 18 rating. It'd be a 99 rating.
Yeah, is it R-rated? They call it in the States.
That's it. Yeah. But moving on, because we are running short of time here, and APG are.
Well, if we're running short of time, it'd have to be a 69 rating, then, wouldn't it? If we can't get all the way up to 99.
Well, quite indeed. Yes. Anyway, pretend that didn't happen. Move on.
And Ray Davis is in the chat room. So hello to you, Ray.
Hey,
Ray.
Absolutely. Yep. I've lined up 2 dollies for you.
Right,
so,
good,
yeah,
excellent. Okay.
So caption this, our weekly picture that we
I've got
put
a
on our Facebook page each week for you to send or to write witty captions.
I'm still
for.
looking forward to hacking this section of the show at some point.
And this week we had a rather edited photo of an aircraft.
Oh, you
here.
mean this wasn't real?
No, unfortunately, there is no such airline as PTUK Airways.
Sake. Right. Okay.
But we had quite a few responses to this picture.
Just describe the picture for those who are listening on the audio podcast.
I'm going to say A320 Al. Al's looking.
Well, yeah, you've. Well, I was going to say something rude then. You fannied around with it so much it's difficult to tell. But, yeah, quite probably.
Right.
Yeah, we've got an A320 with
at some point in its life,
a large group of people on the roof whilst the aircraft is
taxiing to take off. Yes,
no, it's is it take off and landing? I'm just trying to see where the flaps are.
I would say take off.
Yeah, possibly take off.
Only because I don't know.
So we've got a large group of people anyway on top of the aircraft who obviously.
No, it is landing down, isn't it? Because the little puff of smoke on the back wheels.
Oh yes, it's landing.
Down. Yeah,
landing.
So,
yes, and they've obviously.
I assume you don't get puffs of smoke taking off.
Well, hopefully not.
Do you, Al? Do you get puffs of smoke when taking off?
Where shall I go with these puffs?
Okay, right. Okay.
Anyway.
Oh no. Okay, we're out of time.
We're out of time. Let's go. So anyway, for those of you, obviously we'll get some comments in the chat room, no doubt. But we had right. So the first comment we had on our Facebook page was from David, who says PTUK Airways, every second one gets through. Okay, thank you, David.
Quite.
Yes. Nev, take Liam.
Yes, Liam says, maker of Aloha 243 reenactment reads memo.
Oh dear, it's close to the edge there.
Yes, indeed.
Al, do you want to take the next one?
No, because I'm just trying to find it, so I'll come back to me in a moment.
Okay,
I've got it. Yeah. This is from Jake, isn't it?
Yeah.
Finally solved the problem of cabin temperature. Those who think it's too hot have special new seats. Not new special seats, sorry.
Absolutely.
Do you want to take the next one, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. This is from Matt, not me. He said, you've heard of banana boat rides? Take a look at this. It says...
Stan says, what happens if the cabin pressure drops? Well,
I've got it, chaps. I've got it.
Okay, go on.
I've got the venue for the 400th show.
Oh, no.
It's the Banana Bar in Amsterdam.
Oh, boy.
Thank you, Matt, for putting that into my mind.
Right, Nev, what's the next one?
Dari says, looks very much reminiscent of something R. Clarkson would have done in Secret Workshop. Cue the music.
Glenn says, extra seating free with every Sukhoi Superjet sold.
Right, okay, I mean, plenty of space.
Al, do you want the next one?
Yeah, this is from that bounder Neville. And he says, if lower airlines can do it, so can we.
Oh, how close to the mark, Neville.
Have I missed something here?
Nigel says, cheap fare, no mask, panoramic view, the perfect flight.
True, absolutely. You don't have to worry about social distancing there, do you?
I'm hoping that when your new vacuum cleaner comes, that you're not actually going, have I missed something here? Because that would be indicative of a failure of the vacuum cleaner, wouldn't it?
So, Nev, do you want the next one?
John says, we wish to apologise for the cancellations to the 1804 train to Delhi. The replacement plane service will honour all tickets.
I like that.
That's my favourite.
Yeah, I think that's my favourite. Yeah.
Al, do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, this is from David, and his offering is extra legroom included on the rooftop seats, and someone's put a nice little picture in the show notes.
Right.
And Jonathan says economy is upstairs and to the right.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you for all your comments on Facebook, guys and girls. Don't forget to keep your eyes out on Wednesday again next week, where we'll be posting a new picture for you to caption. I'm just reading through the Captain Cruz is obviously he's on the ball because he's actually knows what the airline is, and it's Attacker El Salvador A319. Thank
there
you,
we
Captain
go.
Cruz.
Right, okay, very good.
And that's why we have a chat room, guys and girls.
Indeed,
absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And if we can't come up with a suitable aviation-themed caption contest, we'll show a photo of Matt's new vacuum cleaner.
Right. Yes. Okay. Why not? What's the worst could happen?
Right.
Is
So
it a shark?
Hopefully, yes.
Okay, good.
So moving on,
Rechargeable.
we're gonna go.
No, it's a plug-in job.
Plug-in job.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's a plug-in. Very good.
So we've got some listener feedback which we're going to play out on next week's show. Actually, we've had an email come in, but we're going to put that on next week's show.
Yep.
But we have got some news for the week ahead. So coming up on...
Is that because I'm not on next week and you don't want me to actually alienate any more listeners?
Possibly.
Fair enough.
No, we'll have you on again. Don't panic. So coming up on next week's show, everyone, for those of you who are fans of general aviation or fans of X-Plane 11, because you can use it on there as well, we have got Rob Hart coming on next week, who is the head of marketing and development coordinator for Sky Demon. So if any of you listening are GA pilots and use the app Sky Demon on the flight deck or in your Cessna or Piper or whatever you fly, I know Captain Al uses Sky Demon.
I do indeed. Very good it is.
We have Rob coming on next week's show, so he'll be on with us from 8 o'clock. So we'll go live at 7, and then Rob should be hopefully joining us around about 8 o'clock to come and chat with us all about Sky Demon and what's going on with the app.
Sorry, APG's just gone live, and I've just noticed we're live on APG at the moment.
Live on APG. Oh, okay. Hello, APG.
Well, hello,
that
APG.
won't last long once they realise I'm on.
Yeah, no, that's true. Absolutely. Anyway, come on quickly because they're waiting for us.
Social media links. Don't forget, if you want to contact us, you can through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Follow
Preferably
us on there.
through a lawyer, just to avoid any embarrassment.
The WhatsApp number, if you want to put your
if you're the
picture.
marketing manager for Shark vacuum cleaners, then we can do a special feature where Matt takes one of your vacuum cleaners on a skydive.
So if you want to put a picture of Matt skydiving on the green screen behind us here, you can send your pictures in to +44 757 224 9166. You can email the show podcast@planetalkinguk.com, and don't forget our website allthews.planetalkinguk.com, where you can find our links to Patreon if you want to become a patron of the show, or PayPal as well if you want to donate a small couple of quid to the show. It all helps to push the show forward. Why not try subscribing as well if you haven't already to our YouTube channel. You'll get notifications when we go live, and you can help shape the conversation of the show by joining us in the live YouTube chat room. And don't forget as well, while you're on our website, do your shopping through our Amazon link if you are buying stuff, which I already have this week. Woo-hoo.
Very good.
And you can also find all the links on there to our shop, where you can purchase yourself a very fine PTUK t-shirt and an Alfie. We're selling Alfie this month.
Yeah, free with every purchase.
T-shirt. Or a mug as well, a PTUK mug, which we are also having on the website as well.
Fantastic.
And Alfie's just come in the studio.
Oh, is he? Hello, Alfie.
And just in case you were unaware, if you subscribe to the Shark email, you'll get 10% off the Shark Ninja. You can subscribe by going to the sharkclean.com website, where you can find some fantastic vacuum cleaners that will go skydiving with Matt.
And there we go. For the benefit of the YouTube viewers, there's Alfie the dog.
Alfie. Yeah, absolutely.
The star of the show.
Right. Anyway, go on.
So that's it then, guys and girls. That is where we are going to bring episode 371 of the show to a close. Big thanks to our producer John for all his work in the background over the course of this week. Big thanks to Nev for being on the show tonight and being awesome as always. Thank you, Nev. And big thanks to Matt sitting beside me here. The guy's been pressing all the right buttons and doing everything correctly all during the show. Thank you, Matt. And also not forgetting a massive thanks to our guests tonight on the show. Because let's be fair, Aviation Podcast wouldn't be an aviation podcast without Captain Al being on as a guest. So thank you, Al.
You're most welcome, and I promise not to mess with the show notes next time.
So that's it, guys and girls. Take care, everyone. Enjoy APG, which is starting very soon. And don't forget to tune in next Friday for the show. And we'll have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.